Don't call it a comeback. Actually, do call it a comeback because we are living in the age of revivals, my friends. It seems that with just a little internet complaining and a lot of nostalgia-hungry Netflix executives, almost every show you've ever loved is getting a second life. Full House is now Fuller House. Boy Meets World is now Girl Meets World. Mr. Show is now With Bob and David. And that's not all. Revivals coming to screens near you soon include Twin Peaks and my mother's favorite, Gilmore Girls. I'm Chrissy with Cinematica, and we're talking about some much-needed TV show revivals. First, let's be real. They're a hard thing to pull off. Audiences' expectations are high, and sometimes the show, no matter how good, just can't live up to the hype. I'm not naming any names here, but if I were, it would rhyme with Schmarrested Schmashmelephant. But that's besides the point. Now that the power is in the audience's hands, we're drunk with that power and suggesting some revivals we want to see happen. So buckle up, nostalgia lovers, because Cinematica is counting down the 12 TV shows we need to bring back. Let's get started. Number 12, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Joss Whedon's comedy/horror/teen soap opera Buffy the Vampire Slayer was one of the most compelling and entertaining shows of the 1990s. Unfortunately, it disappeared in 2003, leaving us with only the DVDs of its memory. Buffy centered around a young high school girl, Buffy Summers, whose fate is to be a slayer. That means a slayer of dark and spooky things, like the inside of my boyfriend's closet. All I'm saying is socks deserve to be washed. Am I wrong? Buffy is accompanied on her adventures by a mentor and a group of friends known as the Scooby Gang. Now, I'm not asking for a full season of Buffy back, but I wouldn't be mad at an hour-and-a-half reunion episode. Here's my pitch. Buffy, now a grown woman in her 30s, is in a transition in her career. She was in marketing, but wants to move to a more creative field like graphic design. The catch is that everyone at the graphic design company is a vampire. She gets the Scooby Gang back together to defeat the graphic design vampires, and Buffy realizes that the only thing she's truly loved is slaying. So she kills vampires full-time and freelances as a poster designer for local punk bands. Sold? Sold! Number 11, Who's the Boss? Hold me closer, Tony Danza, because the people have spoken and they want you back. And by people, I mean me. I want you back, Tony. Who's the Boss was a family sitcom that aired from 1984 to 1992, starring Tony Danza as a retired baseball player who takes a job as a housekeeper to a divorced ad executive, Angela Bauer, played by a fierce and fabulous Judith Light. Tony's daughter Samantha, played by Alyssa Milano, who sure loves her cookies, also moves in with Angela, and her son Jonathan, played by some blonde kid who basically never acted again. Now, if Netflix or Hulu or ABC Network were to reboot this show, I suggest that the entire season be in the style of a People's Court trial, where both Tony Danza and Judith Light make cases as to why their characters were in fact the boss. Because did we ever really find out who's the boss? That question is as mysterious as the words Bill Murray whispered into Scarlett Johansson's ear at the end of Lost in Translation. My guess is that he said, "Groovy, baby." Trust me, I've heard Bill Murray is a huge Austin Powers fan. Number 10. Felicity. This may be a controversial entry because the WB show Felicity basically had two endings, so why in the world would we need another? Well, Felicity was created by J.J. Abrams, yes, that J.J. Abrams of Lost, of Star Trek, and of Star Wars: The Force Awakens. You may be thinking, wow, Felicity is an interesting choice for a sci-fi aficionado like Abrams. Well, you're right. Felicity was a very interesting show about a high school graduate, Felicity Porter, who on a whim decides to change her college plans and follow her crush, Ben Covington, to the fictional University of New York. Through the next 4 seasons, the audience is treated to fun antics, deep emotions, and a steamy love triangle that would seemingly never end. Although it did end. Everything was wrapped up perfectly. Our favorite characters graduated college, we found out which couple was going to live happily ever after, and then the WB ordered more episodes. So what does J.J. Abrams do after he's tied everything up in a little bow? He makes the main character time travel. Yep, time travel. This normal college show's last few episodes dealt with time travel and witchcraft. Now, doesn't that sound like the J.J. Abrams we know and love? I request a revival of the show because honestly, it was a really great show until that time travel thing. And I'm part of the internet crazies that just want to see those characters again. Ah! Number 9, Alf, also known as Alien Lifeform, was an NBC sitcom from 1986 to 1990. This wacky sci-fi sitcom centers around Alf, an alien that lands in the garage of a normal suburban family, the Tanners. No, not the Full House Tanners. The Alf Tanners. Yep, there were two sitcom families with the same last name at the same time. The Tanners decide to keep Alf as their own after they find out that an agency called the Alien Task Force will torture and dissect his body for science. And what a beautiful 4 seasons that was. So why revive Alf? Perhaps you don't remember how Alf ends. So let me remind you. Alf decides that it's time to go back to his home planet and help continue his species. He says goodbye to the Tanners and they drop him off at the location his ship is supposed to depart from. But it turns out, Alien Task Force is there. They close in menacingly on Alf and then credits roll. That's the end of the series. They leave it as though the main character's about to be probed and harmed and most likely killed. So let's revive that ish. I suggest it opens with Alf's funeral, but in Tom Sawyer style. Alf isn't really dead. He's escaped the Alien Task Force and goes on a cross-country road trip to find the Tanners. Who wouldn't want to see that cuddly alien hitchhike? Number 8, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Some might argue that Sabrina the Teenage Witch stayed on the air too long, that they should have stopped when she was in fact no longer a teenager. And those people would be right. But we can revive literally anything these days. I'm about to revive my leftover nachos in the microwave. Sabrina the Teenage Witch began its series with a teenage girl named Sabrina, played by Melissa Joan Hart, who lived with her 2 witch aunts. The series continued all the way through college and beyond. This show definitely overstayed its welcome. That's exactly why I propose a reboot. There should be some old characters, but mostly new faces. And this time, it should be set in a zoo and should be called Cassandra, the Teenage Zookeeper. Does she have magic powers? No. Can she clean out the lion cage in 5 seconds flat? Yes. Now, I'll just kick my feet up and watch the money roll in from that fantastic idea. Number 7, Designing Women. Maybe you didn't watch the 1986 to 1993 sitcom Designing Women, but perhaps you watched the Tina Fey series 30 Rock. If you did, you might remember Tina Fey's character Liz Lemon watching a Designing Women marathon and reciting a famous Julia Sugarbaker angry monologue. Do yourself a favor and YouTube a Julia Sugarbaker rant. It's otherworldly. Designing Women was a sitcom about Southern sisters who owned a design studio. The sitcom, while being set in the South, was very liberal. Many of the characters supported then presidential candidate Bill Clinton. That is why I suggest that the revival be a 10-episode mockumentary-style show of the Sugarbaker sisters on the campaign trail with Hillary. It would be amazing. Julia Sugarbaker could deliver an angry monologue to Megyn Kelly, and Bernie Sanders could make a cameo where he asks for help choosing what curtains to put up in his campaign headquarters. Number 6, Walker, Texas Ranger. Walker, Texas Ranger was a CBS sitcom from 1993 to 2001 and starred Chuck Norris as Cordell Walker, a Texas Ranger. Get it? Walker, Texas Ranger. This show was heavy on the martial arts, and not only did it spawn a whole subculture of high school dudes making exclusively Chuck Norris jokes, but it also had a strong moral compass. Which brings me to my pitch for the revival. The show opens on Chuck Norris, pissed drunk in a dive bar, hooking up with a woman in the bathroom stall. The stall door flings open. He sees himself in the mirror and says, "This isn't me." Then he punches the mirror without hurting his hand at all, because he's Chuck Norris, and tells the lady he's been necking with, "Good day." Then he trades in his flask for his old cowboy hat, and the rest of the revival is actually just him in a rehabilitation center. Number 5, Saved by the Bell. Ah, yes. The ultimate high school experience. I grew up watching this show and thought that high school would somehow just magically become more neon than my elementary and junior high. This sugar-coated high school sitcom aired on Saturday mornings from 1989 to 1993. There were actually 2 spin-off series, Saved by the Bell The College Years and Saved by the Bell The New Class. What I'm proposing for the reboot is Saved by the Bell Obedient School. Netflix can reboot the series using only dogs. There can be a cool golden retriever playing the Zach Morris character, a sexy yet sweet poodle playing Kelly Kapowski, and some dog with weird hair playing Screech. Hopefully the Screech dog won't write a tell-all book and get arrested like the real Screech. Number 4, That's So Raven. It seems like only yesterday we said goodbye to the Disney Channel original series That's So Raven. But it wasn't yesterday, it was 2007, which means it's been long enough for us viewers to demand a revival. That's So Raven revolved around Raven Baxter, played by Raven Simone, a teenager who has the power to see the future. She usually used those powers to throw the best party ever to avoid trouble with her parents, but 9 years have passed. Raven's all grown up. I think we can put Raven's powers to work in a much grittier situation, like a horror thriller television show in the vein of the Scream franchise. It would be called That's So Craven. And while Wes Craven will technically have nothing to do with it because he has unfortunately passed, the show will be centered around Raven Simone, an adult woman being stalked by a masked killer. Her psychic powers help her uncover clues one episode at a time. Don't worry, her quirky best friend Chelsea will be in it too, although she'll probably get killed off in the first episode. Sorry, Annalise Vanderpool. Number 3, Family Matters. Yeah, Family Matters! This show was so fun! It revolved around the Winslow family from Chicago, headed by police officer Carl Winslow and his wife Harriet Winslow. But the breakout star of this series was Jaleel White, who played the nerdy next-door neighbor Steve Urkel, or when he stepped into his science changer machine-y thingy, Stefan Urkel, smooth-talking Casanova. It's no denying Steve Urkel was America's favorite character at this time. He had a catchphrase and everything, so when the inevitable Family Matters revival returns, I hope it follows Steve Urkel into his adulthood. Picture this. The revival opens on Steve Urkel teaching a high school chemistry class only to find out that he's been diagnosed with cancer. Being a high school chemistry teacher, Steve Urkel certainly can't afford the treatment his cancer will require, so he teams up with a former student and starts cooking meth. I know, it sounds like a far-fetched idea, but I have a feeling it could work. Number 2, Cheers. Heralded as one of the best sitcoms of all time, Cheers is more than due for a fancy fresh reboot. Running from 1982 to 1993, Cheers captured the spirit of a local Boston bar in the 80s and 90s. Sometimes you do want to go where everyone knows your name, right? That's what the many characters of the first iteration of Cheers thought, and I've got some of my own ideas for the reboot. The 80s and 90s were great. We love them. We want to marry them and have their babies. But the 80s and 90s are in the past. It's 2016, baby. If there's going to be a television show about a bar, it needs to reflect the times of today. That's why I propose to you Cheers Remix. It's about a bar in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. There's a mixologist, a house DJ, and brunch specials every single day. When you walk in, instead of the bartender saying, "Hey," the bartender takes out his phone and takes 7 selfies of himself. Instead of ordering a drink by saying the usual, at Cheers Remix you have to pick between the 3 signature drinks that evening that are all named after old Spice Girls songs. There's probably a pickleback in there somewhere too, because, Brooklyn. Number 1, Golden Girls. Okay, you think I'm crazy. A Golden Girls sequel? How could that be possible when most of the Golden Girls are no longer in the land of the living? Well, just hear me out. The 1985 to 1992 sitcom was pretty monumental for American television. Not only was the cast mainly female, but they were senior citizens, relatively unheard of in sitcom world at the time. The dynamic between the 4 main Golden Girls was the most entertaining part of the show. That's why I'm suggesting Golden Girls prequel. People love prequels. It worked out well enough for Wet Hot American Summer, it can work for Golden Girls too. However, they will need to cast new actors in the roles because Betty White can't hold down the fort by herself. But she can make a great cameo that will send the internet into a frenzy. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we all want? An internet frenzy? Thanks for watching Cinematica's 12 TV shows we need to bring back. What shows do you want to see come back? Let us know in the comments below and be sure to subscribe to Cinematica, where we help you watch smarter.